second reading this morning is Psalm number 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and foes, they shall stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war rise up against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I asked of the Lord that I will seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will set me high on a rock. Now my head is lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. Come, my heart says, seek God's face. Your face, O Lord, do I seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger, you who have been my help. Do not cast me off. Do not forsake me, O God of my salvation. If my mother and father forsake me, the Lord will take me up. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. Do not give up to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they are breathing out violence. I believe that I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. This is the word of God. It was a few weeks ago now that I went to go visit Jackie, who was suffering, as you know, from this pain in her abdomen. She'd not been able to be in church at that point since before Christmas, and she was wondering about how everybody was doing. And I started telling her about the prayer requests that we had been praying while she had been away, about the number of people who had been in and out of the hospital, through surgery, struggling with any number of things. It became almost funny. The list was so long. And Jackie just looked at me and said, "Pastor, maybe you need to start fasting for your people." I've been thinking about that conversation a lot lately, especially as somehow it is suddenly Lent, the traditional church season for fasting. I always think of Lent as kind of an introspective time, a time to take on maybe a new spiritual practice, or to lay low on the inside, waiting like the Marys at the tomb for some signs of hope of spring. As this Lent begins, though, there's a heaviness. Never in my life have I prayed so often for healing, uttering words that sometimes I myself am surprised to hear. The pain and the suffering have been heavy among this community over the past few months. So many have been in the hospital, have been grieving. As we proceed through the prayers of the people each week, death's grasp seems to be tight around us. Now, we have risen to this challenge admirably. We have visited, we have called, we have sent flowers and notes, we have made dinner and joined hands in prayer. But still, there is pain. The people in the hospital, it turns out, are just kind of the tip of the iceberg. Their injuries are the most obvious, the easiest for us to see and to address, right? It's apparent that someone who is recovering from, I don't know, an appendectomy or amputation of a toe or two might need love or care or help getting through daily tasks. They might need dinner made for them or a little visit once in a while. But the same is true also for those of us suffering from depression, from chronic pain, from the weight of addiction, from the sticky film that grief leaves behind, constantly tripping us up. We wear no casts or slings, no IV or hospital ID bracelets, and yet it is as difficult for us to get out of bed in the morning and get through the day as if. as if we had just lost a toe or an appendix. The pain and the suffering have been heavy among this community over the past few months. So many have been in and out of the hospital, through surgery, through contemplative season of Lent, some of us, I know, simply do not have the emotional capacity to take in anything more. The deacons have worn themselves out. They have taken the lead, and all of us have been hard at work, tending to one another's hurts. Looking inside ourselves is just, it's too painful. We're too tired. But there must be hope, right? That's my job, to bring that. And that's why we come here each week again and again. And there is this hope of Easter, of the risen Christ, right? Who proves the power of love and life over death and sin. But what do we do until then? What do we do when the reality of God's healing feels as imaginary as the Easter Bunny? There's this article I've been reading and rereading over these past few weeks as I've thought about Lent. It's written by Sister Joan Chittister, a nun, and I sent it out over email last night. There are a few copies in the back, too, if you'd like to read it. It's called A Time to Heal. And Joan begins her article with a quote from the book of Ecclesiastes. You know Ecclesiastes, right? It's that book. There's a time for this, and a time for that, a time for, and on, right? Well, one of the lines is, there is a time to heal. Now this, Joan points out, is a sentence with a few different meanings. For one, there is a time to pay attention to the suffering around us, to try to abate it. But also, at the same time, there will be a time in every life when we ourselves are the ones who need to be healed. And this thing that each of us needs, or has needed, or will need at some point, Joan says, is not so simple to accomplish. She says of our struggle with pain, we come to the point where we would rather die inside than try again to reshape what would not bend. For some of us, that is when we really start coming to church, right? Nothing calms the pain of giving up on this life like the promise that there will be something else someday when all of this is over and gone away. We gather in church on the promise that things will be made right in the next life. In heaven, that is where the suffering will end. That is where we'll finally be whole. That is where we will finally be healed. We proclaim that we are made new, but we don't really expect anything to change right now. We escape for a moment the pain and suffering that press in around us, ignoring it while we warm ourselves in the light of a future promise. The writer of the psalm this morning could have been any one of us here. Fear, enemies, struggle, and pain press in, and we call out to God regularly. There's really good stuff in that psalm for our painful lives, some mantras that we could embrace, maybe prayers that we could practice. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Or did you feel the relief in this verse? One thing I ask of the Lord, and I will seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And as we begin to feel that familiar, if not quite relieving, feeling of giving up on our painful presence in favor of a peaceful life to come, the psalmist says something so profound, so much bigger than the caves of pain in which we have been living, that it takes our breath away. I believe that I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I believe that I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. At first, it does something to my body. Try saying with me, I believe that I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. It gives me butterflies in my stomach, like I'm a little girl in a candy store with a pocket full of change, or almost kind of an illicit feeling, right? Is it okay for me to say this? Can I really believe this? It's so jarring to me, this verse, that I've written it down and posted it up in every office where I work. For the times when I get depressed, when I feel like a failure, when I feel like nothing I or any of us does makes any difference in this world, I believe that I shall see the So this week, in the grasp of this mind-blowing verse, I thought back to that conversation with Jackie. And I thought about healing. What if we lived our lives as if we believed the psalmist's words? What if we expected to see, to feel, to experience the goodness of God in our lives right now, today, and tomorrow, and all the days of our physical lives here on earth? How would we then live? Believing that we will see the goodness of God in the land of the living. I don't know about you, but it gives me a little bit of courage. Courage maybe to face pain, because it is possible to imagine that healing might actually happen. This week I also came across this interesting quote about Lent from the 20th century American monk Thomas Merton. He says, "We must remember the original meaning of Lent. It is the Church's holy spring in which the catechumens were prepared for their baptism and public penitents were made ready by penance for the restoration to the sacramental life and communion with the rest of the Church. Lent is then not a season of punishment so much as one of healing." So that, I think, is our calling for Lent. To make this Lent a time for healing, both for opening ourselves to the suffering and pain of others and doing whatever we can to make it better, and for opening up to our own pain, to the things that we have ignored in hopes they will just go away, to the feelings we need to share with someone else, the stories we have never told anyone before. Perhaps it is our calling this Lent to share the pains we carry that leave no marks, to ask for help when we need it, and in turn also to visit and to call, to send cards and flowers, to make dinner, to join hands in prayer. I believe that if we enter into this season of Lent as a time to heal, we will emerge on Easter with a new understanding of the life and love of God, which we will claim that day. I believe that we will see the goodness